Hello and welcome to the July edition of Pork Talk. Last month, we spoke about how the outbreak of African swine fever in China has influenced markets. With the disease forecast to drive a sharp drop in Chinese pork production this year, we will take a look at how China might be expected to fill its pork deficit. The latest estimates suggest that China could have up to a 16 million tonne deficit of pork supplies by the end of this year. This is around 70% of what the EU produced last year. Pork and pig offal account for over a third of the protein eaten by Chinese consumers. The disease outbreak has shaken consumer confidence, particularly over food safety concerns, despite the disease being harmless to humans. As a result, Chinese pork consumption is estimated to have fallen by up to 15% this year. But even with the lower demand, China will still be short of pork. So where will it turn? The EU is already the largest exporter of pork to China, and so is poised to benefit from the increase in import demand. Spain in particular is in a good position to react as its pork sector continues to expand. Elsewhere, pig herds across Europe have been contracting, but in the longer term, the larger exporting countries in northwest Europe are expected to increase their herd sizes once again in response to the rising demand. Of course, the current positive market sentiment will only last if the ASF outbreak within Europe remains isolated. Despite ongoing trade disputes, China remains one of the key export destinations for US pork. Whilst US pork exports to China have fallen by 4% this year, this is relatively small when considering that US pork is now subject to a 62% import tariff in China. Strong export growth is expected in the second half this year, once the Chinese cold stores are depleted, and this will only be stronger if the trade dispute is resolved. Elsewhere, Canadian pork exports in China have already increased by over 50% this year. However, limited herd growth and tight pork supplies may further restrict growth in the future. Meanwhile, Brazil is also expected to be a key player due to strong production growth and better producer returns. The impacts of the outbreak are being felt in many other global markets. Chinese consumers are increasingly turning to other sources of protein. We expect that beef, lamb, and dairy markets will benefit from increased Chinese consumption. However, this is also likely to stretch to both poultry and fish markets as well. While global production of beef, poultry, and sheep meat are expected to increase this year, it's not enough to compensate for the drop in pig meat production. As a result, global meat production is forecast to fall by 0.2% this year. This tightness is likely to support protein markets at a global level. To keep up to date with the latest price movements and pork market trends, please visit the Prices and Stats section of the AHDB Pork website to get the most up-to-date information, or subscribe to the new AHDB Pork weekly newsletter.